Welcome. This is the Artist Path, and I am your host, Flynn Heathcliff, and this is the first episode of my podcast series, The Artist Path. So this series is really about learning what it means to be a creative. It's about the real life stuff and not just what you see on Instagram or Facebook or social media, YouTube. YouTube counts as social media, I guess. Um, it's not just about what you see on there. It's about the rawness, the days where things aren't going so well. It's about the creative process. I just wanted to document, interview, figure out what people go through in their own creative crafts and what challenges that they face on a daily, as well as figure out for myself uh, what are some better ways to improve in certain creative mediums. So I'm going to be interviewing people who do videography, photography, dancing, poetry, really any creative medium. The first, very first interview is my good friend, Myles Isreal. So, Myles is a former classmate of mine and someone that I've worked with both in acting class as well as on the set of one of his films that he wrote and directed. Unfortunately, we didn't get to finish it, but that's a story for another day. Myles is a GGC graduate. He graduated in fall of 2020 with a degree in writing for the stage and screen, cinema, media arts, production major. For people who don't know what that is, that's a film major. So I brought Myles on to really dive into his creative process as a writer and also talk about some of the challenges that he's faced in with his career after graduation, due to COVID, but also just due to being a film major in the quote unquote real world. So without further ado, let's get straight into it.
Myles, when did you first develop your passion for screenwriting and filmmaking?
Well, I first developed passion, I would say, for writing at a very young age, because I used to write quote unquote books to where I just took like notebook paper and I would like draw ugly, crude little pictures because I have no skill to draw, and I would like tell stories. A lot of times I copied stories or just made my own iterations of stories from things that I already loved as a child. So that's when my passion initially started with, I guess, writing and making stories in general. But for film specifically, it was, I want to say my sophomore year in college. Because when I started to go to GGC, my first year was just basically full of the core class crap. And then for like my sophomore year, I saw there was a film class. This was before GGC had a film major at all. It was an introduction to film with Professor Balsley. So I took it because I was like, oh, okay, I'm kind of interested in film, so I'll see what it's all about. And taking that class, learning the little bit of things I did, and then like doing like some video making projects, it really just sparked inside me that inner want to like create, write, and tell stories and do it like in a visual medium. So that's the class that I like really realized that I think I want to do something in film, and that's where my life pretty much completely took a transition from me going to be a criminal justice major for some weird pipe dream to like be a cool guy in the FBI with a black suit and a gun in my pocket in my suit to wanting to write and direct movies.
Wow. Wow. See, I never would have noticed.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny. It's kind of funny, the whole criminal justice thing, because there was actually a point in my life as well where I wanted to be a cop. I know it's not the same, but I don't know. Maybe it's a common theme among creatives where you got to start off in the criminal justice area, or at least there before you make that transition to full-time creative.
Yeah, it's weird. I had the moment where I wanted to be a cop too. It's like I want to do FBI or CIA just because like the black suit shit, that was like real cool to me. And I was like, I probably got to work my way up being a cop. So then I started to like romanticize the idea of being a cop and having like a cool police car and something like that.
Like the movies and the TV shows.
Exactly, just like that. Thank God that didn't happen.
So you mentioned that when you first, you would kind of borrow or be inspired by some of the stories that you liked and were familiar with. To touch upon that, what are some of your, currently speaking, what are some of your biggest influences? Or who are some of your biggest influences?
Well, those things that I would typically write about when I was younger, it still play into today. I mean, you've been in class with me, Flynn. You know my very open love for Star Wars. So obviously that's one of the biggest influences for me. Even today, like then when I was a child, I think I rewrote like episodes 1, 2, and 3 in like 4th grade or 3rd grade or something. And I remember getting called to the office because they were like, these are wonderful books, but you can't pass them around class or whatever. Because that people, you know, like getting their heads cut off and shit. But other than Star Wars, I would say my other biggest influence is Halo. I don't know if too many people are familiar. That's like a really, maybe not at the moment, but a few years ago, it was like a flagship game franchise for Xbox, and it technically still is, but it's fallen off a little bit in the past couple years. Hopefully it gets revived in the year at the new release. But yeah, I would say that Halo, Star Wars are like probably at the top tier, and then there's just kind of like other things that I really like or am inspired by that I take influence off depending on like whatever kind of interesting stories I want to tell. Like I really like kind of horror, thriller, sci-fi stuff. So you know, I'm really inspired by like Get Out or Us. You know, Jordan Peele is a icon to me. Even like some black comedy or satirical kind of narrative thing. So Donald Glover, I'm inspired by him in that aspect for shows like Atlanta or even like Insecure, you know, just different things.
So I'm curious, what did your family think about you going to school for screenwriting? Because I know that's not, especially as a black man, that's not really, you know, one of the most prominent majors that we go to school for. So I'm just curious, like, what did your family think about it?
Well, thankfully, I don't have a family situation where they were forcing me to be a nurse or, you know, whatever other kind of career path. They were like, hey, you know, find something that's good, that's viable, that's white collar, and, you know, you could do well in. So, I mean, I would say overall, like, the screenwriting support, or when I was like, hey, I want to do film, there wasn't any, like, resistance or friction, because pretty much the most people that I actually interact with in my family are pretty supportive of whatever I do, you know, assuming that it's not dumb or stupid or bad or whatever. So
Right.
I didn't really get any backlash from it. It was like just like, okay, cool, you know, just try and learn whatever you can about it and how you can get there, and, you know, also just keep in mind of I guess like fallback options or whatever, but there wasn't any kind of like head turns or like eyebrow raises or anything like that.
So you mentioned fallback options. I think for us as film majors and for the other film majors out there, it's more talked about in like a creative field, fallback options.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I'm not the type to have fallback options. Like I'm the type to think about it, you know, like what can I do as playing C through D or whatever, but as far as just going for what I want, I just focus more on that. I feel like focusing more on what you want helps you in the long term rather than focusing on all the alternatives.
I agree with it. I fallback options to me it feels like a bit of a lack of committeds, which I could understand. Or committeds, I don't even know that's the word, commitment, which I could understand, because like doing something creative, because creativity is just completely subjective. You're never going to get everybody on the same page about whatever creative work you do, whether it's, you know, painting, drawing, music, or movies or whatever. Like everybody's always going to have a different thought and opinion about it. So it's something, and it's also very kind of like freelancery. So it's something that's not secure. It's not secure as just like, I have a job. It's recognized necessarily in the eyes of the government. I go, I clock in, I work my hours, and I clock out, and I get a paycheck, no questions asked. It's a lot of high risk, possibly low reward, and it's also not guaranteed. So
Right.
For people to, you know, mention fallback options, it's like, I get it, because there's no guarantee that just because I want to go out and be a super big popular music artist that I'm ever going to achieve or accomplish that, because you just never know. But for me, I look at it as like, if I'm not committing fully or 100% to something, then I already have it in my mind that I can't do this, that I can't complete this, or I can't be this or whatever. And that's just seeping into a territory of having self-doubt, which, you know, we all go through self-doubt, but it hasn't got enough to the point to where I'm just like, all right, just in case I don't become a writer or director, what other job am I okay with being? You know, I've always viewed everything in the sense of getting where I want to go, even if it isn't necessarily in a linear path of like how I might view it. Like, you know, like you were saying, I might view of like, okay, how can I get to this position? I can take this route, I could take this route, I could take this route. You know, I might view different kind of options and routes to go, but at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is still the same. So that's just how I look at it. I recently had a situation where I left my old job working at Walmart because I got an opportunity to work with a film production company. They wanted to hire me on to work with them, but I would have to leave Walmart. Now, Walmart is a secure job, you know, clock in, clock out. I get paid money every 2 weeks, no questions asked, no problems, nothing that changes. It's safe, it's secure, and it guarantees me money. These guys were putting me on a 1-month contract, and it was like under the assumption on my performance or how well I do or don't do, they would talk about renewing that contract or extending that or whatever. So it's just like, it's a risk because I leave my secure job and I go to something that the future is ambiguous. You know, I don't know. I might not make it past the month. I might not even make it to the full month, you know? And, you know, when I was getting ready to leave my job, because of course I went for it, I was like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm not going to turn it down. You know, people at my job were like, oh, you know, if you want to just like take a leave of absence and, you know, just in case it doesn't work out or whatever. And at first I was like, yeah, I might do that, you know, just in case. But then I was like, nah, I'm gonna commit to this 100%. And then when I said that I wasn't doing a leave of absence, and my immediate manager lady asked why, I was like, because it's gonna work out. I'm not gonna come back, so it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yo, you told her, bro.
Yeah. Just clarify. I wasn't doing it in the matter of being a dick or not. And I was just it's gonna work out. I'm not worried about it. I don't need the option to be able to come back to Walmart because I know that it's going to work out.
In yourself and that confidence in yourself.
Yep, exactly.
So you mentioned self-doubt, and you're talking about confidence and commitment. All that takes courage. And I think where a lot of people stop and take what I would call the easy route, the side job, and just commit to stability, it takes a lot of courage to overcome that fear of, if I take this leap, is there going to be ground? Am I going to land on solid ground?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have that fear and that self-doubt, well, maybe I can't do it because the next person didn't do it. Can you talk about how you've overcome that self-doubt?
Yeah. It's an interesting question because I'm not even completely sure, because a good portion of my life, maybe a year or two prior and still leaking into now, was just having a lot of depressive issues and confidence and all that. But it's even through all of that, and even now to today, it's no matter what I've gone through or what mind state I've been in, for some reason I've always tried, I guess. It's no matter how much I feel like I can't do something or I won't be good at something, I've always tried. There's been plenty of moments to where things will delay me, or I might just fall back from it or take a while on it, but at some point I will try it. And if it fails, then I might be upset or get pissed off or whatever, lick my wounds for a while, but at some point my brain is going to convince me to try again. It's going to convince me not to because of the fear, like you were talking about, but at the same time I'm going to overwhelm it to the point of no, I'm going to try this again. And it's just because the thought of doing whatever idea I have, it gets me excited. And that motivates me enough to have me keep going. And I really haven't figured out why that is necessarily. I know a portion of it is because just going through life, you just when you're interacting with other people and you start to understand people and life more and the way that people and life and society kind of works together, I just will see people and I will see motivation, or I will see ambition, or whatever else. I will see talent, I will see creativity, I'll see whatever, but it all gets squashed because of, I don't know, their lack of dedication to doing something, their lack of ambition to keep going, to trying, or whatever. And I don't know, that's just somewhere or something that I've never wanted to be or thought of myself in being. I've never been the type of person that was cool or comfortable or was okay with the thought of and not in a insulting manner, but just being a 9-to-5.
Right.
I've never, anytime I've thought of myself living the aspect of a 9-to-5, I've just never been comfortable with that. That's never something that I've thought about and been yeah, I could do that for the rest of my life. No, I hate that. So I don't know. It's just, I could never see myself living that lifestyle. So I guess that has subconsciously forced me to keep pushing to going forward and to striving higher and to doing what I want to do.
you definitely have resilience, resilience and courage. You definitely have resilience and vision too, especially as a screenwriter. Like you need vision to be able to see your stories mentally and to be able to construct them. But more so, when I say vision, I mean a vision for yourself. Important in the creative journey is being resilient to the point to where, like you said, when you fall, you're able to get back up and not be psyched out. Because fear kills and ends more dreams than any obstacle. Obstacles just create fear. Obstacles just create doubt. But if you don't have the courage and the resilience to push stop at each door that's placed in your way, that's a very, very great point. Slight transition to dive deeper into. I want to talk about your creative process as a writer. So I'm always curious about people's processes in regards to how they do what they do. It fascinates me as a creative person because I'm into different creative mediums like photography, music, modeling, fashion, and now podcasting with this podcast / show, whatever. We're still working on it. But when I reflect on it, my process for each of them is different. So for podcasting, my process is more thought out. It's more deliberate. I'm using more like critical thinking and putting pieces together, more planning. But with music, it just comes very natural to me. It's a very in the moment thing. I hardly ever think about planning. I hardly ever plan music out. It just flows from within me, and I just ride that creative flow until I have a song. I say all that to ask, what is your creative process as a screenwriter?
Well, first and foremost, I want to say I admire and envious of your musical creative flow. I would like some of that. But for my creative process as a writer, I don't know. It's like I want to feel like it's abnormal, but it probably isn't. I know typically for a lot of things or people, they have to like, get this kind of whole pre-planning and organizational process with things first before they dive into it, which I get, because having a well-structured body going into something definitely makes it run smoother, when you start. But I don't know. I don't like doing a whole bunch of pre-work or logistics or paperwork or any of that stuff. Like the pre-production aspect of film, I hate. So I'm just like, it's just all tedious work. So for writing, it usually starts to where I see a scene in my head. I see a scene of something. It could just be whatever, whether it be inspired off of something else, whether it be completely random. I just see a visualization of a scene in my head for an X amount of time, and I'm just like, oh man, that looks kind of cool. So I try to expand on that. And then all of a sudden, I'm getting more like multiple scenes within the same realm of this story just popping up in my head. And then, at this point, it's just like, okay, these are just random things I'm seeing, but it's not a story yet. But then I try to create a story around it, essentially. So I take whoever I see, whatever the setting is, and I try to figure out a story behind it. I try to figure out like, okay, where are we? Where does this take place? Who are these characters? And what's the story here? And when I get enough of that, then I just try to do like, it's a bit of a rough outline, because the outline is more so detailing out like what's going to happen from start to finish. But I usually try to do general beats, which is like, okay, at the beginning, this note needs to be hit, then continuing out, this note needs to be hit, blah, blah, blah. And I just kind of fill out the rest of it. Like as I start writing, like I might have 2 general beats at the top, but I plan to work out the details of what exactly is happening while I'm writing it, rather than trying to figure that out beforehand. Because I'm a person that if I get too bogged down with like pre-planning and pre-work, then that's just going to suck the creative juice out of me to where I'm not going to want to do it anymore, or not going to have the energy to do it anymore. Because when I get that initial spark to where I'm seeing the story, to where I'm visualizing the story, that's when I'm at my most excited. That's when I have like you were saying, like that creative flow, you know? So I'm just like, I gotta capitalize off this while this is hitting, you know, even if I gotta just like write down what I'm seeing, you know, I just gotta somehow capitalize off this. So then I put full steam ahead into whatever that is. And yeah, I mean, going into it, that's kind of more or less it. The writing process itself, it's just full of a lot of ups and downs, you know. You 1 minute you're in a flow, next minute you got writer's block, next minute you're having self-doubt and confidence issues, and you're like rereading or rethinking about what you have already made. You're like, is this good enough? Does this work? Does this make sense? Blah blah blah. You know, you're getting into the question territory where you're asking all the what ifs, and then it slows you down. And yeah, so all that happens, but eventually you make it through, and you know, you get to where you got a pretty good story, and then you try to share your little baby with the world and hope that it's received well. Exactly. I hope they don't chew you up, little child.
It's now that I hear you say that, it reminds me of my writing process for music. Because when I'm writing a song, it's less of a visual and more of like maybe it's like and I'm not too familiar with music theory and terms and stuff, so I may say this wrong, but melodies and stuff, sometimes phrases or lines will come to me, or the way I say something will come to me, and I just build from there. Maybe it's a beat that I hear and I just build from there. And when you have the song when I have the song made and I'm thinking about sharing it with people, I kind of wonder, how is this going to be interpreted? How are people going to interpret this? Because meaning to my songs that I understand, that are like deliberately conscious meanings and themes, and other times it'll just be something that I wrote that I don't understand in the moment just yet, or maybe there's no story to it just yet. So when I put it out into the world, I always question, like, how do people feel about this? Because I'm sure you get this all the time when you share something with someone and they're like, well, it's good, but what does that mean? Like, what does it good mean? Like, does it mean you like it? Does it mean you resonate with it? It's acceptable? Does it mean it's exceptional? Like, what does that mean? So I always think about that.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm glad
that's where that part where it's like creativity is subjective. Everybody's gonna have a different opinion about it, but it doesn't help you as the creator, because then you're just like, but all this isn't helping me if I know if it's good or not.
Right. From time to time, I hear about different writers talking about their processes. Some writers talk to write early in the day when everybody's still asleep and the sun hasn't even rose. Other people prefer to write at night, being in Starbucks, coffee shop, others on the porch or on the beach or something. Obviously, there's no right or wrong way when it comes to the creative process and each one's creative process. But I'm sure we would both agree that just having a creative process is beneficial because it brings comfort and at times inspiration.
Absolutely.
So for the writers out there, for all my writers out there, whether you're a musician or a screenwriter, film writer, you're writing plays, in writing skits, which I'm interested in writing skits, so that's why I threw that out there. Myles, how would you recommend that someone develop their creative process?
Let's see.
I know that's a heavy question. Because
it is a heavy question, so I want to note that to everybody who listens that this is a heavy question that I am answering just now on the fly. I would say a lot of it has to do with just finding like what makes you comfortable and what makes you creative. Because like for me, I can't focus or write when there's a lot going on around me. You know, it's like I know some people like to work with music or with the TV on, you know, just like have some noise happening around them. I get too easily distracted. I need to work like to where it's complete silence, to where there's like little to nothing going on around me, or else it's going to pull me away from whatever I'm trying to focus on. I could just nothing could be happening. I could look over at my kitchen and be like, wonder what's going on interesting in there. So I'm just too easily distractible. But it also makes me feel a lot more comfortable because I know that I'm focusing and I could hear what I'm doing even better. And, you know, another little, I guess, embarrassing tidbit of when I write, usually when I write scripts, I'm always visualizing how the characters talk and sound. So like when I'm like really into it, I'll be like reading it out loud in their voice. So I'll be in here making a bunch of weird, dumb voices. But it helps me. It helps me creatively because that gets me more into the story, you know, and seeing everything sounds right. So I would just say like whatever helps you creatively and whatever helps you to be comfortable. You know, if you like white noise on in the background because that's soothing for you and can help you focus more, then do that. You know, you just gotta like, I guess, explore your options. You know what you like as a human being, you know, as an individual. You know what kind of things you like and what things you don't like. You know what places and settings you like and what things you don't like. Think about those places. Think about those things. You know, these places are things that make you happy, that make you comfortable, that maybe make you feel a little inspired. And I would say trial and error, you know, just try and spend time doing those things or being in those places or whatever when you're trying to go through your creative process. And if it works out for you, then tack it on to like, you know, you're just like, okay, it helps me if I sit down in a cafe, in a public cafe, and write. So let me keep that in my notes. So then, you know, you add that onto your kind of process and routine. So a lot of trial and error. As a human being, you know, you go through, you discover a lot of things about life and yourself. This is just kind of another one of those things. Just gotta go out and see what works for you.
What inspires the stories and the characters that you write about?
Typically other things, other media that I'm interested in or like, you know, I mean, it gets into a difficult territory as a creator to where it's like, I'm inspired by this story or this character, but how can I make it to where it's unique to me and I'm not just completely ripping off of whatever I'm inspired by? But the shorthand answer is other things.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's a constant battle. I'm just like, man, is this too much like this thing? If I give somebody else to read it without giving them like that's one thing that I was doing. Like I was like, yeah, I like this story. It's kind of like this. But then, you know, when I get criticism from it, they be like, yeah, it's like this. And I'm just like, okay, I should start giving people the story without the context of like, hey, I'm inspired off of this thing, and see if they ever make that connection. But right. Yeah, it's difficult as a creator just to be like, man, I like this thing or this person. how can I mock them but not mock them?
Right, right. And there's definitely a fine line with that, because like you said, they could easily attribute that character, relate that character to someone else, and then that kind of, I don't know, I mean, it kind of takes the fun out of it, you know?
Yeah, because then it's like, oh, great. Now you're just comparing what I did to basically just ripping off of this.
Right. He's like Obi-Wan. He's Obi-Wan.
It's like, God damn it, Obi-Wan's not the only old wise man.
Right. He's the black version.
Yeah.
So how do you determine if a story is worth exploring?
Honestly, if it makes me feel excitable in any capacity, then it's worth exploring to me.
Okay, so I guess my follow-up question to that is, when I say exploring, or when you say exploring, does exploring mean writing it out and entertaining the idea to the point of producing it, like or is exploring to you just enjoying the idea for what it is and being able to let it go? Because
go ahead.
because for me, sometimes I'll have, I don't implement every creative idea that that comes across, because that'll be too many ideas. You can only do so much. In reality, you can only do so much, and some ideas you keep for now and others for later, and some in the back of your mind. But some ideas, I just entertain them. Like, I explore them mentally through imagination and visualization, but I don't actually put pen to paper and draw them out, execute them, or try to execute them. I allow them to be, and I let them go. And I think some people would say that's very foolish, because every idea has potential. But I think I would say the same thing in response. Every idea has potential, but you just can't execute every idea. And I think sometimes it's best for your mind and your creative space sometimes to not hoard ideas, not to hoard every creative inspiration you have, because there's going to be more. Evil isn't like money to where you can just run out, block it. And that's where creative block, writer's block comes from, or you can allow it. And I've always been under the assumption that I can have so many creative ideas and so many different, I'll be good. Like, I have that faith. Some people, it may not be the same, but back to the question, is exploring, in your opinion, is that exploring to the point to where you're executing, or exploring to the point where you're just entertaining the idea?
Well, to what you were saying, I kind of agree with both sentiments. For me, most ideas I think are worth exploring. I might not pin them down just yet, but usually if I have an idea for maybe a show or a film or whatever, I'm going to at least write it down, because kind of like what you were saying, like, I don't think you should get bogged down with like too much stuff either, but mine's more in the thought process of like, I think it's counterproductive to focus on too many creative things at once, because then you're most likely lessening one thing, and you're just really draining your energy and you're becoming exhausted. So I try to narrow down my focus on, like, I will focus on this many creative tasks on top of maintaining my everyday life as a living human being as well, and still function properly. But for other ideas that I think it's just fun exploring, like just the thought of, or in theory, maybe are more so things that I know that 9 times out of 10 it won't happen, or it's just kind of like impossible. Like, like obviously being the big fan of certain things that I am, I will again use the example of Star Wars. I have, of course, thought of many different things to inject within Star Wars, whether it be storylines or movies or characters or situations or scenarios or whatever. Those are things that I'm just like, this is fun to explore in my head because I love this, media. And I think that this would be like a really cool personal addition that I could throw into it or whatever. But the likelihood of, me getting to the point to where I have control over what I can actually add canonically and lore wise into Star Wars is very slim. Not impossible, but slim. Who knows? Disney might slide me some money to direct my own Star Wars. Who's to say? But, it's not really something that's that feasible to me. So it's just like, I'll just explore it mentally because it's fun. And, I won't necessarily put it down, but it'll just kind of be in the back of my brain. And then maybe if it ever becomes relevant again, then hopefully it can be freed and unlocked out. Or this other thing that I do to where I think of completely unrealistic scenarios of me basically being in another time or life and living my life completely different than what my reality is. Those are the two things to where I'm just like, this isn't worth really entertaining. But any idea that I have or anything that I think of that I am very interested in or feel very passionate about, the least I'll do is write it down. Like, I might not execute it the next day, the next week, month, year, or years, but I have it written down somewhere to where it's like, okay, eventually I might get to you.
That's how I be treating. I had to.
Long
Eventually,
list of potentials.
Eventually I will get to you. So it's always good. You always got to write things down to tag along. You always got to write things down. Sometimes I'll have dreams and it's like, I know the dream is a movie. It's just weird. It's a movie. And sometimes I'll not. How to describe it? But I just know, like, sometimes I write things down. Like, I write things down for my dreams, and it helps. Even if the idea in my dreams makes I still write it down. It helps. So, not too long ago, we were in the same acting class. You graduated. I'm about to graduate.
Hey, congrats.
Thank you. So we acted in Shaking Up Shakespeare, which was 2020. It was right before COVID, interestingly enough. We kind of got lucky because COVID was a thing, but it wasn't a thing in the US. So
was it in the fall or the spring?
It was in the spring. Oh,
it was like right before COVID then.
Yeah, I remember it being like February, maybe early March, around that time.
Yeah.
And you are definitely one of the people who I look to and learn from in that whole process. I don't know if I said that.
I believe you have before, but still, thanks. I appreciate it.
Definitely. I think we did talk about that. How do you think being an actor has led you to become a better screenwriter?
It does, because it's like the same in which, like, you learn filmmaking it takes a village, it's not individual. So if you were to learn more about a specific aspect of making something as a whole piece, then it definitely enhances your ability to I guess, do a part of it that isn't necessarily directly that, but you are heavily influencing upon whatever that is.
Mhm.
So being an actor, doing acting stuff, and acting in people's stuff, it's just like, as a writer, I could just understand, I guess, better of like, I don't know. It's like I can hear it in my brain, but it's not translating out my mouth the way I want it to. But you work one part of a job, you're able to better understand how that job works. So when you're doing something else that influences that job, you're just like, okay, like I've done that before, so I kind of understand what they might need or what they might want, or how to make this to where it's easier or more understandable for that person or that area or whatever, if that makes sense.
It does. Is it like, so I'm gonna use an analogy here.
Mm-hmm.
Like working at, and then you become the manager and you're managing people flipping burgers.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly what it is. It's like, okay, I was a burger flipper, so I know that I can't ask this man to flip 10 burgers in 30 minutes because that's kind of impossible given the work environment.
Mm-hmm.
So as the manager, I won't ask my burger flippers to flip 10 burgers in 30 minutes.
Perfect analogy.
It is a really good analogy.
Oh man. I definitely noticed, I definitely knew that it played a role. I think when I found out that your concentration was in screenwriting versus the majority of everybody else, which was design and production, I realized, oh, well, I mean, he's acting in this play and he's acted before. So I know that plays a role in how you write, how you write characters, how you write stories, because you were literally in those shoes of a character looking at a script and having to interpret and make choices. And so I knew it, and
Yeah.
I knew it benefited you.
Absolutely. I mean, more knowledge always helps.
For sure. So I always love to end my shows with advice for people out there who don't know what they're doing, who want to do something, because into a creative field, oftentimes people don't know where to start. I'll speak for myself. I want to start writing skits, filming skits, being in the skits, but but we don't always know where to start, and I don't necessarily know where to start as far as writing a skit. So what advice would you offer to anyone who wanted to start screenwriting, skit writing, playwriting, or just writing in general?
First and foremost, whatever idea that you have, write it down. And if you get into that idea fountain territory where it's like everything is just spraying and flowing out from this thought that you have, trust me, write it down. Because I've had so many times to where I'll have that happen and I don't write down all the details like I should have, and then when I actually start getting to the process of maybe doing something with it, I'm just like, fuck, I forgot that thing. And when you forget something and you hit a little wall in your flow, it stops you, and then that's what kind of triggers a writer's block. So write down as much as you can. Like, it made it feel like a lot, but trust me, it's gonna help you when you actually start to do it. Also, find something to write in. Screenwriting specifically, it's formatted a certain way. It's very easy to, I guess, play in this format because they have so much software out there that can just do it for you. There's definitely parts you have to learn about it in regards to doing certain things within formatting, like what to capitalize and when to capitalize it. and you don't write screenplays like you would a novel. But look for a good software. There's plenty out there. There's Final Draft, which Final Draft is industry standard, but it does cost a pretty chunk of money. But it's a one-time payment, so that's a good thing about it. There's also Celtics, which they have a free version, but it only allows you to write up to 3 scripts. So I would probably suggest playing with that one for a while, just to kind of get used to it. And, if you feel like, okay, this is something I want to do more and I need more inventory space, then I would probably suggest getting Final Draft. Otherwise, if you do something more in the screenwriting realm, you might run into a situation where you're working with professionals and they're like, Final Draft is industry standard, so I don't know why you're handing me this Celtic script. So yeah, write down as much of your ideas as you can, and learn a little bit about how screenwriting is done. Get a nice software to do it, and also understand, going back to like the point of subjectivity, that everything is subjective. Everything creative is subjective, and not even the matter of opinion about the content of your story, but just how you write in general. A thing that was very frustrating for me coming up learning screenwriting is that they teach you rules / guidelines on what you are supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do and how you're supposed to write, not supposed to write. But then, people that you look at or other people's stuff that you read or whatever, they break those rules all the time. Or you might do something that one person told you should or shouldn't do, and another person might tell you the complete opposite. And then you get super confused and frustrated because you're just like, what am I supposed to do? So my advice for that is just find your voice and write how you're comfortable with. That is something that I had to figure out and learn how to do as a writer. And once you find a writing style and your voice and how you are comfortable with writing something, and you just kind of toss the I don't give a shit anymore out the window about what other people might think about it necessarily, it makes it so much easier to write. Because otherwise you're just going to constantly be in your head if you're doing something right, or if how you worded that, or if that thing is correct, and it's every sort of thing like that is just going to do nothing but stop you. And that's what you don't want. So you got to not give a fuck about whatever people might say about it. Find what you are comfortable with, how you write, find your voice, and it'll make things so much easier.